I'm
There we
Resident
go.
Caller for YouTube Jewel Sage, joined by Katherine Gonzales. We're here to talk dark shows. We're here to talk about the Phoenix Ark, played by Dana Malay, Laura Collins, well, Laura Stockbridge.
Or
Really,
Murdoch
Murdoch.
Collins.
Yeah, there you go. Really, an interesting character that
Hmm.
Dan Curtis creates here. I mean, this is pre Barnabas. This is his
Hmm.
first official monster. They cast the lovely Dana Malay. They're taking the Phoenix legend, if you will, where the every so many years that the Phoenix rises from its own ashes. But in this strange sense, they're adding a person to the mix, and they're using David's mother. We have heard of David's mother in prior episodes, that she went away, that she wasn't well. Now we were also told that in this Phoenix arc that she was living in Phoenix, pun intended. And yeah, the show is punning the Phoenix thing. Though she was living in Phoenix, Arizona. I'm punning it now. But it's really interesting what they do here, that Laura Collins, David's mother, is burned alive in her own apartment, and the
Hmm.
Phoenix sort of, well, not sort of, does assume her identity, her memory, her looks, her persona, everything. What did you think of this?
Um, I think Laura herself is rather smart, but not smart enough. Because I think the thing with her locket is really kind of the downfall that gets Vicky very curious about her, and then that kind of spirals into the whole thing with the painting by Sam Evans, and just all of that, where now it's like, okay, everybody's like suspicious of her, everybody's afraid of her, that sort of thing. I think if Laura Collins had been a little smarter when she was telling Vicky the story about that locket, if she'd maybe taken the locket with her or something. I mean, I don't know exactly how that all works, but it just seemed to me like that was like, okay, that kind of got you on the bad side of the governess when you did that, and when Vicky's very determined to find something out, she drives everybody crazy with her persistence, and you know
Vicky is on the case here. She's at first she does try to get David,
hmm
close to his mother, but
hmm
David backs away and almost goes off Widow's Hill. Vicky
hmm
saves him, thank God. And but the first place you meet Laura is is in the
coffee shop.
is in the coffee shop. Thank you. Get five
Hmm
words. Is in the coffee shop, and Sam Evans sees her, and he's just like, he doesn't say anything.
hmm
He goes to the Blue Whale, which is like Sam Evans' second home, um, and he phones up Roger. He goes, "You got to meet me at the Blue Whale," and he's like, "Yeah, I got to tell you who I saw." And so
hmm
Roger's like, "What do you want? Like, well, why are you calling me? Why are you bothering me?" And he's like, "Guess who I saw? Guess who I saw?" He goes, well, "Why don't you quit drinking?" He goes, "Oh no, I need this." He
hmm
goes, "Guess who I saw? Guess who's back in town? Your wife, your wife." And the look on Roger's face is like, "Oh God, no," because because what we find out is Roger's wife, Laura, and by
hmm
Laura I mean the woman who got burned up in Phoenix,
hmm
was there the night that Roger was driving the car. So you're getting the sense of, he either doesn't want her in town or he really wants to talk to her. So he can't seem to locate her. Here's the weird thing: Burke can't even locate her in her own hotel room. Like he's not
They're in
on
the same. Jordan isn't that big, right?
right. It's like is this one Houdini? What did you think of that little disappearing act? Like they at
I
first they
I
can't seem to find her.
I thought that was very peculiar because you'll notice too that even Maggie talks about how Laura doesn't eat anything
Yeah.
or drink anything. So I wonder if maybe she has these kind of states, because remember when she's near a fire and she kind of like zones out into the fire. Do you remember that when she was in Collinwood and Liz was calling her, and when she was doing the thing with Sam Evans to cause the fire, and she was just so into it. And when Liz finally, I guess, taps her on the shoulder or something, and she has that horrible look on her face, and she just said, "Oh, it must have been so lost in thought." I wonder if perhaps she kind of goes into these sort of like zoning out, almost vegetative states or something periodically, because there's quite a few scenes where you have people like Burke or somebody saying, "Oh, well, I called and there's no answer," or "I knocked and she's not there," but it doesn't seem like she's really leaving and doing anything. So I don't know. Maybe that's part of the whole Phoenix thing. Maybe she has to recharge her batteries. I don't know.
Yeah,
But it's very peculiar.
the fire is very much Laura's friend throughout this entire arc, and the pun is intended too because she focuses a lot on fire. Like when she goes in when she gets Matthew Morgan's old cottage. I mean, she keeps that fire going all the time, and she stays near it, and she always wants David to come to her. And I was like, wow, this is really deep. It's like, you're sort of trying to solve the mystery too of, okay, so what really happened to David's mother? Like, did she really burn up? Didn't she? And they answer that pretty swiftly. They say yes, her body burnt up,
Mhm.
and when they come there and question her, it's like she has all her memories. She has every bit of Laura's memories. She has
Mhm.
every bit of everything Laura knew she knew.
Mhm. And all the dental records match, and the blood
Yeah.
matches. So they're 100% positive. This is
Yeah.
Collins. Like there can be no doubt. But then everybody is so sure that Laura Collins is there at Collinwood. So how can this be?
Yeah, I think what you have here is somebody who's taken Laura's identity, physic, who stole her physical appearance, not just her physical appearance, but every bit of information that she had,
Memory,
and to
Roger,
memory,
with
and
her.
and
Mhm.
manifested herself in the image of Laura. But how do you manifest your image? Well, you got to burn the real one alive.
Mhm.
And I sort of think that, again, I do think Laura wanted to see David. And I think maybe the Phoenix is like, oh, I can help you do that. You just got to give me your body. Like, what do you mean? Oh, if you give me your body, you'll see David again. And
Yeah.
well, she didn't exactly read the fine print.
Yeah,
But
in this first instance with the Phoenix, rather than like 1897 later, you do feel like there is genuine love and some genuine feeling for David. But then again, there is that sense of like possession,
yeah,
and saying I need him, not he needs me, or I need him. She
yeah,
even, in fact, refers to David as belonging to her in one scene.
yeah,
You know, so I think that there is something there, that there is part of that Laura that did genuinely love and care for David. um, there's somewhere, but that is being overcome by the force of the Phoenix. And that first scene in the coffee shop, she actually looks sort of sad. She looks sort of lost and bewildered and kind of just sad, and like you don't know what's going on, you know. And towards the end of that storyline, she's so much more confident.
yeah.
She really is. So it's like something's got to be happening here.
I think the last we really get of like Laura a bit is when they burn the portrait, when Roger burns it, because I think part of Laura's spirit was somehow in that portrait, and so because you hear this big scream, it sounds
Hmm.
like a woman screaming. Some say it's just that, but I'm not so sold
I don't know
It,
why I just
yeah,
scream.
like I'm not so sold it is. I
Hmm.
think it's whatever was left of Laura in spirit just burned up. I do think that because the something that keeps in mind of this is who tries to burn Sam Evans's hand and causes a fire? The Phoenix. Like
Hmm.
she burns. She's trying to not just burn his hands, but set that portrait on fire. And I think she figures if I could destroy that portrait, I'll destroy what's left of the spirit of Laura. What do you think? Am I crazy?
There does seem to be two sides of Laura that are sort of fighting with each other, because her personality is very kind of back and forth. One minute she's very pleasant, she's very like a loving mother, and then the next she's very possessive, and she is transfixed by a burning match, or the fire at the cottage, and she basically becomes another person before your eyes. This person who is just so transfixed and mesmerized by this fire, the fire that is the source of her power and the source of her life and death.
What did you think of uh, Doctor? Well, before I get to Doctor Guffrey, Elizabeth, Joan Bennett here is going to get wrote off the show for a bit. There, I mean, no. Prior to this, nobody really touched Joan Bennett's character.
Hmm.
So, and the Phoenix puts her in a coma, but before she can completely, she puts Carolyn in charge. What did you think of them sort of writing Joan Bennett off the show for a bit, and two, sort of forcing Carolyn to grow up a lot?
Well, I mean, you can kind of see it for what it is, which is that okay, Joan Bennett needed a break, and you can kind of tell those moments in the show anytime a character needed a break. Like really, like Barnabas can't be in that coffin for 3 weeks or something while he's on vacation. But you get to kind of be able to tell those moments. I think it was good for Carolyn,
Yeah.
because she was still very, I think, well, even up to after Barnabas arrives, she does have a lot of like immaturity, and so I mean that was a great move, I think, in kind of getting Carolyn to kind of be the adult in the house, and grow up.
It was nice to see because prior to this, we saw very much Nancy Barrett's character Carolyn was a brat at times, falling over head over heels with Burt Devlin, sort of
Hmm.
being standoffish towards Joe. She was very strong headed and stubborn. And I mean, she's stubborn in this arc, but it's more to an adult theme. Like she's very much following what her mother wanted to do. And she's standing her ground against Roger, who's sort of like, hey, wait a second, like that's my kid. And I love Lewis Edmonds and Nancy Barrett's chemistry in this arc.
Hmm.
What did you think?
I love their chemistry as well. I always have. I think they just play together beautifully, no matter what characters they are. They have such wonderful chemistry. But I did like to see that of Carolyn, and it reminds you that Carolyn is growing up. She's not a teenager, whereas before her behavior was much more, I think, of a teenager. But Laura makes that remark when she meets her again, when she comes to Collinwood, like, you were 12 years old with braces the last time I saw you. And
Yeah.
this has been what, 9 or 10 years. So that puts her above a teenager. She's got to be what, 22.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, you got to grow up some. You can't get away with some of this behavior so much anymore.
Unless Buzz shows up in the town, then you can get away with
Well, if Buzz shows up, all bets are off.
it.
I think the threat of Jason McGuire will drive people to do drastic things.
Yeah. Let's get married to this biker guy. Let's get engaged to him. One of the most interesting. That is one of the most interesting side characters of Dark Shadows.
Hmm.
But you really have, again, great dialogue between Nancy Barrett and Lewis Edmonds, them sort of bickering back and forth. And Carolyn wants to bring in someone to help her mother, and of all the people Frank Gardner knows, he knows this parapsychologist, a doctor who could help, perhaps help. And who
Hmm.
did they phone up? They phone up Dr. Peter Guthrie. We get our first doctor of the two sort of investigates the supernatural. What did you think of Dr. Peter Guthrie?
I thought it was interesting. I think that he was unlike anyone they had previously had, on the show. Unlike any of the other characters, kind of in this world in Collinsport, because again, even though you had some Josette's ghost stuff, there wasn't really a whole lot of supernatural things going on. And now you're bringing in this outsider who knows like all about like the supernatural world. And guess what? The supernatural world is here in Collinsport. It's here in Collinwood. It's here now. We have to deal with this now.
I
you
like
know
how, I like how he handles this too, because usually when you see an investigator, some of the times they mostly have a side. They've mostly sort of made up their own mind or picked a side in a sense. With
hmm
with Dr. Peter Guthrie, he's just there. He's investigating it first. He doesn't
hmm
make an accusation. He doesn't point a finger at Laura. He's
hmm
just investigating the situation and what may have occurred in the house.
hmm
And I think that was, first of all, genius by the writers. Really, really smart, because I think if you play it the wrong way, the character just comes across as hokey.
hmm
And he doesn't come across that at all.
hmm and with Laura too is we discover, especially with what happens to Liz, is that Laura is powerful and she can punish her enemies. Look what she did with Sam Evans. Look what she did to Liz. And
Yep.
it's like, hey, maybe if it had kind of gone more in that direction, we wouldn't have answers, because okay, this character is like going down like that because Laura ain't having it.
Yeah. I think it's smart how he handles this too. He he asked, Sam Evans. He goes, "Nobody believes me." He's like, "I believe you."
Hmm
And Sam's like, "Oh, you do?" And you
hmm
like how Dr. Guthrie handled it, because you can tell,
hmm
yeah, he does believe in. He
Yeah.
believes the story. And Josette is very much involved in this arc heavily to the ghost of Josette. She
hmm
is signaling through Victoria. She's speaking through her at a seance. So, you have Josette and Victoria who are teaming up with Dr. Peter Guthrie, who are trying to take down Laura. And you learn something in this arc too. Josette and Laura, the Phoenix, knew one another. This is your first hint that the Phoenix is a lot older than what we thought.
hmm
What did you think of that?
Yeah. Well, I like that moment in the car when Victoria smells the jasmine and she knows
Yeah.
instantly, that's Josette, and she's telling Frank, okay, we have to pull over here, we have to go here, we have to do, and he's kind of like, what? And but she's very much like, I have to do this, and she keeps knocking at the door because she knows that's where she's going to find answers, and she knows that through Josette. And I think the relationship between Josette and Victoria Winters is it's a beautiful relationship because Josette's always been there to help her. She was there with Matthew Morgan and all that sort of thing, and she's very much a protector. And I think where you have this instance where her enemy has come back for someone that she knew, that she knows is no good, she's going to make sure that somebody listens, and obviously that person must be Vicky. I mean, because David, I don't think, even though David does, I think, listen to Josette and talk to her, whatever. This is his mother, and he's had very mixed feelings about his mother. First, he wants to be with his mother, and then he doesn't, and then he does, and then he doesn't. So I think that logical choice is Josette going to Vicky to find the answers and get the information.
Yeah, a great scene too is when Laura is holding David in the cottage and she's holding him, and you see the ghost of Josette appear. and she reaches out her arms and she's like, "He's mine, Josette. He's mine."
Mm-hmm.
And when Josette's goes face, it's like, "Yeah, this is just round one. I'll be back."
Mm-hmm.
um, which I love. What did you think of that scene?
I like that too, and I thought the same thing because remember my first experience with Laura was in 1897 because I came in 1969, watched to the end, and then came back around. So that brought to mind to me those scenes of that Laura, and she was doing battle with Angelique and Quentin, and they were fighting fire with fire. Literally, they were calling upon these Egyptian gods and speaking, to the fire, and trying to vanquish Laura and all that sort of thing. And so, I mean, that to me was very kind of similar. Like, okay, she knows who her formidable foe is, but she is determined to fight this, and that's how she was really in 1897 too. She, even though she had, a very powerful witch, that was basically like, hey, you tried to kill my man, I'm gonna get you now. you
Yeah,
know she was still very kind of confident that she was going to be the victor.
yeah. Yeah, Laura is not shy on confidence. That's the thing too. Like her
Hmm.
character, like whether it's here or 1897,
Hmm.
she's not lost on. She's not somebody who's good, who's coming to lose a fight. She's got every confidence that she'll win
Hmm.
one, no matter
Hmm.
who it's with. And you like that as a villain because, in even like when you look at wrestling or this, heels are the most cockiest thing ever because they have to sort of be to sort of put over your protagonist to sort of like, I don't like how cocky you're being. I like this guy over here.
Hmm.
you know, that's something heels do very well, especially in Dark Shadows. Like Laura was just very overconfident,
Hmm.
and I like how in the seance you have, Victoria winners, Alexander Mulkiisos speaking French, Josette speaking for her, Laura's at the seance,
Hmm.
and she's just like, no, like she's giving her these dirty looks like with her big eyes. Like you can tell she's trying to like force her out of Vicky's body. And finally Vicky just had enough and then collapses. So, and this right here is sort of, I think this seance here is where Dr. Guffrey's like, okay, something's going on here for sure. Because why would this ghost even try to speak to us if something wasn't? And
Hmm.
then he starts really asking Laura a lot of questions, and he finds her like the way she's sort of starting to be invasive with him. That's what sort of draws his suspicion too.
Hmm.
What did you think?
I think so too, and that does go back to what I was saying before, where I don't think Laura's particularly that smart. I know she's very confident. She has confidence
Yeah,
in, but I don't think she particularly thinks things out. And it's like she doesn't really think about, like, okay, she's going to be questioned on certain things, or that people won't just take her word for things, or that she can almost sort of bully her way through things. It's like things don't really work like that. And it's like earlier when they were asking him about the body in the apartment, and at first she says, oh, I don't know who that could be, and then she says it's a cleaning lady. It's like, okay, why wouldn't you have said that before? Because for sure people are going to keep asking you about this, you know? And then to not even think about like all her answers, like you don't know this cleaning woman's last name, you don't know that she would or wouldn't have returned a key to your apartment. It's all the little things
yeah,
that she doesn't really think about. And so, here you've got this seance, which is kind of like a big thing. And
yeah.
it's like, again, it's like you didn't really think this through, did you, Laura? You didn't think about what happened.
Yeah, you're right. She draws a lot of her own suspicions onto herself,
Hmm.
and her answers are sort of flimsy.
Hmm.
And it's what causes really Elizabeth and Carolyn and even Vicky to be like, yeah, something's up with this lady.
Hmm.
And like the whole locket thing too, that whole thing, like Vicky's just
Yeah.
like,
And
wait a second.
yeah, because the thing with Laura is she's already a suspicious figure
Yeah,
coming back. town under so long an absence. She's been in a sanitarium where they supposedly said she was a hopeless case. Now we don't know what they mean by that. We don't know exactly why she was there, exactly what went on, all that sort of thing. So she's already got all the suspicion in the first place, you know, and she just keeps getting more and more suspicious. She really does. And it's like, okay, if your ultimate goal is to take your child, wouldn't you want to make sure you have all your T's crossed and your I's dotted, and make sure that every story that you have for everything matches up, that you know exactly what you're going to say before you even get there? Because the moment she arrives into town, she's got suspicious eyes on her, you know.
I sort of wonder sometimes, like with the way they did the Phoenix, because I agree with you. Like like from a standpoint of how like the calculating the missteps she has,
Mm-hmm.
it's like I sort of wonder if the character wasn't supposed to be even darker and sort of damage the family in a way to sort of steal David away. I don't think she was, but it's sort of interesting to wonder because like even when Bert turns on it, finally turns, because that's the thing. The one person she has in her pocket is Bert Devlin. She has sort of charmed him away,
Mm-hmm.
and she sort of charmed Roger, but finally Roger sort of breaks through. Like, okay, no one takes my son anywhere. He's
Mm-hmm.
had enough. You know, he's sort of suspicious of the whole Bert Laura thing too. And
Mm-hmm.
then Burke finally turns because Vicky goes to Burke like, "Would I ever lie to you? No. Think about what this woman is here for and what she's been up to." And okay, so and they even find out through Burke that Laura was the last one to see Elizabeth. That Laura saw Elizabeth and Burke kissing it because Burke says about it when
Mm-hmm.
she gets asked. And again, it's another key evidence for Dr. Guthrie. I really enjoy that sort of okay, they've got their pieces, they've got their evidence. Okay, Laura is definitely not who she's saying she is. There's something
Mm-hmm.
going on. Dr. Guthrie wants a little more proof, a little more clarity from Josette, and
Mm-hmm.
he feels that she's going to be the one to provide it, and he wants to hold another seance.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny because the Phoenix Ark is our first seance in Dark Shadows history.
Mm-hmm.
You know, with Vicky speaking French. They're going to hold another seance in the Phoenix Ark, which they do. Dr. Guthrie gets 86 before it happens. He gets killed. Uh, so, what did you think of Dr. Guthrie's death?
I thought it was untimely, just when things I think were really kind of getting interesting. And okay, here you've got this guy who obviously knows about these sort of things and that really could be a help here, and now he's gone. But then I think Josette's ghost kind of steps in and takes over that role, eventually. So it's like, okay, it all ends well. But I mean, all of that's really where Dark Shadows kind of tipped the scale. It wasn't with the first appearance of Josette's ghost. It's with the seance and this whole acceptance of the paranormal as a reality. I think that was the moment that this went from being a regular soap opera, even though you'd had some paranormal elements before. That was really that this moment, the shining moment, that it's like, okay, this isn't normal daytime TV. This is something special, and we can only go on from here.
I think when they first start sort of playing for keeps with the whole supernatural thing is when we see a ghost appear in the drawing room. And you can make the case of who the ghost is. You could say it's Josette. You could say, is it Vicky's father? Who knows? We don't know. Then we see Josette's ghost coming out the portrait later on. And I think once that happens, and once they start to go down the road of who killed Bill Malloy, and then you see Bill Malloy's ghost, where they
Mhm.
really start playing for keeps is when Josette tells her everything's going to be okay. Everything's going to, don't cry. It'll be okay. And then the widows and Matthew Morgan show up and they murder or Bill Malloy shows up and the widow show up and they murder Matthew Morgan's house. It's like the ghost played for keeps now.
I think with all those ghosts before, I mean, it was certainly something and it was certainly supernatural, but I think with the seance, that just brought in this whole new element, that it wasn't just these ghosts wandering around, and that it wasn't, just helpful ghosts, because really that's kind of what we've had is these, ghosts that, help the family and that sort of thing. But that moment when they hang the portrait in David's room and he's in bed and Laura's face is pulsating and the paint and comes out of the painting. And that's another big moment because it's like, hey, not all of these supernatural things on the show were good things. Where before we had all, ghosts that were helpers. This is totally different.
Yeah, you have this moment that's just creepy as hell with that portrait. And when Roger burning it, it's just like, damn, Roger, dude, it's just burn it. Yeah. It's like, I love it. One of my favorite scenes in this arc too is when Sam Evans. I love David Ford to death. He can be funny without making an effort to be funny. When he shows Roger this portrait of his wife half naked, pretty much, and he's like, "What does it mean?" And Roger's like, "What do you mean? Like, why are you asking me? Like, I don't know." And I love that scene between the two of them. Like, right? Yeah. What did you think?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what he really expected Roger to say. He's the one that painted this. He's the one who chose to give it Laura's face, and his whole thing about he was compelled. I don't know why. Well, I mean, to a man like Roger, that just sounds like nonsense. He's going to be like, you don't know why you painted a picture.
Yeah.
And of course we all know that Sam Evans is the town drunk. So, you do kind of logically think, okay, this man had, a few too many drinks and he just was painting Laura Collins because she's back in town and, there's something with Laura Collins. So I think that's initially kind of what you think until, the story goes on where you realize, no, there's something really going on here with Laura.
Now, if Professor Stokes would have been there, he'd have bought that portrait.
Oh yeah,
he'd have bought.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
It'd have been interesting to see if that would have happened too, but no such luck.
Guthrie is what I'm thinking. I think they probably moved in the same occult circles or something.
Yeah, it's sort of, that's the thing too. Like the portrait, that's the sad part about the portrait being destroyed. It gets destroyed before Guthrie shows up.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, but Guthries like, man, I wish I could have seen that portrait.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, you would have bought it, you sly dog, you.
Mm-hmm.
It's cool though to think about that. Like, you have this character who's coming in and he's investigating. And you're right. You have the supernatural versus the supernatural. What you also have too, I think, is you have the humans like Vicky, Carolyn to a degree, Dr. Guthrie, Sam Evans. They're being used by the supernatural to help fight this battle, to help fight this conflict, because they know they can't do it by themselves. And I think that's one of the key things too with this arc. You pointed out the supernatural, and I agree with you, but I also think the supernatural needs assistance. And who can we get to assist us? The goddamn living. We're gonna put them to work. Really, really cool stuff. What do you think of that? Sorry.
Yeah, I think so. What I was going to ask you though is, what do you think of the theory with Laura? In both this story arc and in 1897, Laura, who is a supernatural creature, her children seem to possess some sort of supernatural or psychic abilities. So not every marriage she had produced children, but the ones that did.
Yeah.
I mean, it does seem odd because here you have David who seems to talk to ghosts regularly and has ever since he's come to Collinwood. And in 1897, Nora is drawing hieroglyphs that she could have no idea what they could mean. Do you think that there's anything in the theory that something is passed down possibly through generations with some of these supernatural creatures, and that could make why their children have these experiences?
I think there's a lot of things going on when you look at Dark Shadows and you look at the the supernatural creatures who end up having kids, or who even don't. I'll use some examples before I get into David. Okay, Count Patofe, he was born with his powers. He was born with his abilities. And I think really what you have with that situation is sort of a situation like X-Men. There are people who, in the Dark Shadows universe, if you will, who are literally born the way they are through through DNA. They're not given the powers by God or the devil or some other deity. They're just born that way. With David, his mother was, a phoenix. She has a child. So the question becomes, well, does he have psychic abilities? Yes. Do we always necessarily see those psychic abilities come to the forefront? Not every single one of them, but we see a big part of them. He says he could talk to ghosts. He says he sees things through the crystal ball, which I believe in. He says he basically foresaw Burt Devlin's plane crash. We also know for a fact that when he saw Maggie Evans dressed as Josette, he just thought he saw Josette again. That's a whole nother matter. But one of the big things is where his medium powers sort of come to the forefront is Sarah. That's sort of your big hint that, okay, David has a lot of medium ability and he can use it when he really wants to. The question becomes, with David, does he control it or does it control him? And I think that answer is it really depends on the spirit as well. I don't think David has full-fledged control of his ability, because I think his ability can be manipulated. And by manipulated, I don't mean like he doesn't actually see it. I mean, it depends on the ghost. And if the ghost is good, the ghost isn't going to manipulate him. If the ghost is bad, aka Quentin / Judas Zachary, if you will, he's going to get manipulated up and down. So I think that's, to give a rough around answer, in a sense, yes. But I also think it depends on a lot of things. The ghost, is the ghost good? Is the ghost bad? And again, David himself, he doesn't have full-fledged control. It's, in many ways, in every way, in a weird way, though I've talked about Patofe too, we're sort of getting into the X-Men territory in a sense, where I think Dark Shadows is sort of somewhat taking from X-Men, especially more so with Patofe than anything else, but somewhat with David too. Okay, David has these abilities that he can't quite control himself. Is there a school where he can learn that? Nope. But if this were Marvel, yeah, there'd be the Professor School of the Gifted. But
if the series had continued, obviously I think Professor Stokes would be, the one that could, teach him or something. I think if Madame Finley hadn't died too, I think she could have filled that position.
That's the thing too. Like, even with you've had characters like Dr. Guthrie, Professor Stokes, and they do talk to David, but none of them are necessarily teaching him how to use necessarily this full-fledged ability. I do think it's because David himself, there's a part of David Collins that just wants to be a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And there's sort of that fight of, okay, yeah, I want to be a kid, but there's also this really cool world that calls to me. And I'm not, when it's Sarah, yes, I want to see Sarah.
Mm-hmm.
When it's bad, now again, with most ghosts, when you see ghosts like Quentin, they're not saying, hey, we're bad up front. They're not being up front with him. They're sort of deceiving him.
Let's play a game.
Yeah, right. It's like, how do you appeal to a child? You just say, well, let's play a game, right? That's the thing. It all depends on the ghost, like I said. And I do think that with David, I don't think David's the type of kid who's going to go up to somebody and say, teach me how to use my abilities.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to have to be somebody who comes up to him and has that sort of like The Shining, where the one guy tells Danny Torrance, hey, you have The Shining. You have what I have. You know, you want me to teach you some things? You know, that sort. It's going to be sort of that type of figure in David's life that has to actually come up to him and have the same set ability, but has a lot more control over it, if that makes sense.
Right. But now that does kind of leave the question. So, if there is going to be a sort of continuation of Dark Shadows, like in a new series or something, like, we think, do you think that would be explored in that new series?
I could see it. Mark B. Perry sounds like a super, super smart dude, so he knows what he's doing. I could see it being explored. I mean, Dark Shadows is a world full of possibilities. It's funny. He said something on Twitter, and I don't know if I don't want to sound like I'm talking out of school, but since he did respond to it publicly on Twitter, so I don't think I'll get in any trouble. I said, it's too bad Angelique and Barnabas never had a kid. And he put, didn't they? Question marks. So it's like, again, I don't know what he all has planned. I don't think he was just trying to play around. But I'm excited. I think here's this Dark Shadows fan who knows what he's doing. And again, there's another writer too who knows what he's doing. And unfortunately, I do wish, in a sense, because I got to talk to him and interview him, not Mark Perry, but John Philip Betancourt, who wrote The Return of Dark Shadows. I think did a phenomenal job of that whole art, the whole thing from start to finish. What he did, I was just blown away by everything he put together. But he had a ton of new characters, and I think he only had 6 of the original characters, which is amazing considering the world he sort of was going off of. But it's really cool to see another fan like Mark B. Perry trying to bring it to television. It's really cool. Really, really awesome. I hope it happens.
I think it could be really cool if it happens.
What's something you'd like to see?
I would like to see an origin story of the evil at Collinwood. I want to see if it does in fact originate with Judah Zachary, and if it doesn't, where did it come from? Why has it been dormant for so long? Why does it only pop up, certain times? I mean, that the house itself is so much a character in its own. Fascinating to find out exactly what secrets are in its walls. What else don't we know that could explain so much?
Yeah, I mean, that would be cool to see for sure. What did you think of the conclusion of the Phoenix Ark? You have, Laura taking David to the shack and it's on fire.
Yeah, it was very dramatic. Some of the special effects were better than others.
Yeah.
Because there are some beautiful shots where the lighting is kind of pulsing, that looks like flames, kind of the light from flame dancing across Diana Malay's face or about the room. But then, you also have these chroma key flames that don't quite do it the scene justice, where it doesn't look like they're really in any imminent danger of burning, you know. But then you get that wonderful shot, when the ceiling catches fire and it falls onto Laura, and that does look quite believable. And that's kind of like, oh, but it's also where right before that happens, and she says, hurry, quickly, we only have a few seconds, but she's so calm, you know. So that kind of drives me nuts too. It's like here she's trying to like desperately get David into the flames, but then when her supposed last moments come, she's almost calm about it until she just screams, you know. And that was very unnerving, that she's just kind of just very calm, almost like, hurry, we only have a few seconds. And then she just, and it's like, whoa. And then he's just like hysterically crying and, running out of, trying to get out the door and get to Vicky. And, I mean, so that had to be obviously traumatic, you know. But it's very interesting, that moment of almost calm and then just that blood curdling scream, and then to realize that the Phoenix has in fact gone up.
Yeah.
That was really cool.
I think there's two reasons. Like, she's very sort of calm too. She knows she doesn't have much time. Her powers are weakening. And another reason too, in another 100 years, this woman knows she's coming back. I mean, I've always sort of made the joke about with like the Dirk Wilkins saying, people like Dirk Wilkins is ready to commit murder to bring Laura Collins back. He wants her back, but they can't do it. If I could have just had like 10 seconds with Dirk Wilkins, like, Dirk, dude, listen, we'll chain you up in the coffin, buddy, and we'll let you out in 100 years. In 100 years, she'll be back. No problem.
But I mean, I seriously don't think in 100 years she would want him, because she obviously uses men, and it was just so obvious in 1897. And she is just using men left and right. She has used every man in the Collins family. She's so manipulative. And I mean, she obviously doesn't care for Dirk. There's that moment where she like kisses him on the cheek, and he just like takes it. But it's like, okay, if you're just like so like in love with this woman and think she's so wonderful or something, it's like, I don't know. That's just very kind of jarring to me, that he just accepts this kind of very chaste kiss on the cheek, because he is just so enamored of her and is willing to do anything that she wants. That he's willing to take crumbs. He's willing to take anything she wants to throw his way.
I sort of get why though too. I can't believe I'm about to defend Dirk Wilkins. Actually, yeah, I can. I've defended a lot of characters on our show. So yeah, I think that the reason he takes is because he's just so lonely. This is a woman who's really shown him interest, and he believes her. I mean, it's not hard for Dana Millay to be believed, but Dirk Wilkins getting turned into the vampire that Barnabas turns him into, and it's like, Barnabas, buddy, messed up, dude.
Yeah, he is like the most psychotic vampire, the most vampiristic animal vampire. It's crazy.
I think like I tell people this all the time. Like, I don't know what 1897 was like before Barnabas showed up, and what Def's year was like before Barnabas showed up. But let me tell you something. When Barnabas showed up for Def, business was a booming. Like, Mr. Best was writing himself a thank you card. Dear Mr. Barnabas Collins, thank you for this business. Oh, another customer. Oh, thank you, sir. Yeah. This has been a lot of fun talking to Phoenix Ark with you. I don't think I have any more questions. You made a lot of great points too about the supernatural. I do agree with you that you have a great battle going on here between Ghost and Phoenix. And I do think if it weren't for like Josette using Vicky and the other humans, she'd be in some trouble. So, our buddy Barnabas, he runs into all sorts of trouble in 1897. He does not help his own case either. Is there anything you want to add before we go?
I can't think of anything.
First of all, thank you so much for joining me tonight. This was a lot of fun.
My pleasure.
Good night, Catherine. Have a good night.
Night. You have a good night.
Bye bye.
Bye.